channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Friday, everyone. For today's video, I have a clock that I worked on that has been in my stash for at least a couple of years, you guys. It was pretty dusty and filthy when I pulled it out, and I really wanted to give it a kind of moody fall makeover. So that's the direction I went with it. I love how it came out. I think it's one of the best projects I've done in a while. I hope you guys really like it too. So without further ado, let's get to today's video. This past Saturday, I had a sidewalk sale here at the cottage, and before the sale, I went through all of my little areas in the cottage where I have random stuff just kind of stashed and laying around. And when I was doing that, I ran across this clock. I've had this thing in there for, oh gosh, probably at least 2 or 3 years. And so I decided to pull it out and do something with it. So I'm starting today by cleaning off the front face of it. I had to get rid of the little sticker that went around where the hands are, and then take off all of the numbers so that I could take it outside and sand it. Now, I know you guys probably can't tell, but the paint on this little clock is kind of textured. And of course, there are some raised places where some of the flowers were painted on. And so I'm going over the entire thing with my palm sander, and I'm starting with some 120 grit sandpaper. I really wanted to eat down through some of that paint in places and just work on starting to get a smoother surface. I was really nervous about taking the mechanism out of this clock, so I was trying to sand around the hands. That did not end up working really well, so I ended up having to take the mechanism out of my clock. And at this point, I was just praying that I could put it back together and have it still work. Then, of course, I had to do a little hand sanding in the places that my palm sander couldn't reach. And when I was finished with the 120 grit sandpaper, I moved on to some 220 grit just to, again, make sure that I had a nice smooth surface, at least as smooth as I could possibly make it. Then it was time to bring it back inside and get it cleaned up and ready for some paint. I'm starting with my crud cutter just to make sure I've got a really clean surface, wiping that all back. And when I'm finished with the crud cutter, I'm going to go over the entire clock with my mister bottle and some clean water just to make sure I don't have any residue left behind from the crud cutter. Now, I did take a little time to really think about what I wanted this clock to look like when I was finished. And what I landed on was kind of a moody autumn vibe. So I'm starting with my paint, and I'm going black with this clock. This is Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, and the color is Lantern. It is a beautiful, deep, rich black, and I just love it. Now, I did add Extra Bond to my paint. I didn't want to take the chance that any of my paint would crackle or chip off. I wanted a nice, smooth, even surface on my clock. You can see here too that I'm getting great coverage with the milk paint, and I almost could have gotten away with one coat. However, there were just a couple places where some of those flowers were still barely peeking through. So I did end up going over the entire thing with 2 coats of the paint. Once my paint was completely dry, I went over all of my flat surfaces with some 220 grit sandpaper. I'm not trying to do any distressing at all here. I just want a nice smooth surface. So I'm just making sure that I don't have any chunks or uneven areas. And at this point, before I got any farther into this project, I figured it was a good time to go ahead and paint the back of my clock as well. So I did go ahead and put a couple of coats of paint on the back of the clock. Then when the back was dry, I flipped it back over and washed everything back off. I am going to be adding transfers to a lot of these areas, so I wanted to make sure that I got all of the sanding dust removed before I proceeded. So just wiping it down with some clean water on a damp shop towel. Then I went ahead and set my clock aside for a little bit so I could move on to creating some castings that I wanted to use on it with this absolutely gorgeous new mold by Redesign with Prima called Golden Solstice. To create my castings, I'm using Amazing Casting Resin, which is a 2-part resin. I'm taking equal parts from each of the bottles, putting them into my silicone cup, stirring really, really well, and then gently, carefully pouring that resin into my mold. I'm trying here to get it into all of the little nooks and crannies, and whatever I can't pour into, I just use this little popsicle stick to kind of pull the resin into those places. And once I was done pouring my resin, I set this mold aside while I went back to work on my clock. The next step in this project is adding the transfers to the clock. And for my transfer set, I decided to go with this beautiful new one by Redesign with Prima called Saffron Solstice. It's a gorgeous midi. It has 3 sheets of absolutely beautiful little floral images. I love the colors. They're very autumn. And so I'm just starting on one side of my clock, and I picked one of the images, cut it out, peeled the backer off, laid it down where I wanted it, and then used the transfer stick to gently rub that transfer down into my paint while I peeled back the piece of vellum. You can see here I'm doing that same thing. And then once I have my transfer adhered, I am going over it really well with my finger, kind of burnishing it in. And this will help make sure that there aren't any wrinkles or lifted areas in the transfer, and also helps to kind of hide that little halo that tends to be around them. And you can see here, once I got that first image applied, I am just using little bits of that transfer set and working my way up the side, filling in each little gap as I go. And if I have a small gap, honestly, I just cut some of the pieces of the transfer set apart and used those to fill some holes. And of course, once I am finished with this side of the clock, I am just going to flip it over and work on the other side using the exact same method, starting at the bottom and just kind of working my way to the top. As you can probably tell, this process did take some time, but I absolutely love the way that these transfers look against that black paint, and I am really happy so far with how my clock is coming along. Then I decided it was time to work on the face. And for this section, I decided it would be wise to go ahead and get my layout kind of down before I started applying transfers. So I cut out all my pieces and spent some time laying everything out, including the castings that I wanted to use along the bottom, before I ever actually applied my first transfer. So once I have everything pretty well set the way I want it, I can go ahead and start applying each of my transfers. Once that was done, it was time to go back to work on the castings themselves. They needed some paint, and so I'm going to be painting them all with more of that Sweet Pickins lantern color. So I'm just going over each one with a little painter's brush. It only took one coat, and I'm just being careful to make sure that I get down in all the nooks and crannies with that paint and go along the sides as well. Now I really want these sunflowers to have a little bit of sparkle, and to achieve that I am using Golden Ticket Liquid Patina by DIY, and I am just dry brushing that over the lantern color. So I'm using a little chip brush here, and I'm barely dipping the tips of the bristles into that liquid patina, and then I'm wiping most of that back off onto a shop towel, and then going in over my sunflowers with that brush. And I'm going in all the different directions to make sure that I get some of that Golden Ticket over all of the lantern paint, but I'm still leaving enough of that black color showing through that they have really good depth and dimension. And then once I was finished with the faces of all my sunflowers, I picked them up and went around the edges just to make sure that I didn't have any really dark black spots left on them. Now I have to say at this point I was really excited to get to add my castings to my clock, but when I laid this bigger casting onto the black panel on the clock, it really looked kind of lost. It needed something. So I racked my brain, I walked around my kitchen, I looked and looked until I finally found this stencil. And this is an older one by Redesign with Prima. I forget the name honestly, but I cut it so that it would fit into the clock. And then I am using a stencil brush and my Golden Ticket, and I'm adding some beautiful texture and movement to the background for my sunflower casting. Once I was finished with that, it was finally time to glue down my castings. And for that job, I am using Type Bond Quick and Thick, and I'm just adding some to the back of each of my castings. And then I like to take a little brush and just spread it so that it's got a nice, thin, even coat all over the back of my casting before laying it down. Once I finished applying all of my castings, I did let everything sit and dry for a couple of hours before coming back in to seal my paint. And to seal, I am using DIY's black wax. Now, the reason I chose black wax is because I love the way that it helps to really richen, deepen, and darken the black paint. You can see here as I'm brushing it on what a difference it makes. And even over the castings, it's kind of helping to add a little bit of darkness and patina to that golden ticket, which I love. So I'm just brushing it on, and I'm using a pretty small little brush. I didn't want to have anything too big and take the chance of accidentally knocking one of my castings off. So I'm just going very carefully and gently around each one. And then once I have a section finished, again, I'm very carefully wiping back the excess with a dry shop towel, just kind of dabbing it out of the little spaces and off of the sunflowers as I go. Now, one thing that I always have on hand when I am using a solid wax are mineral spirits. And I like to use just a little bit of mineral spirits with my wax to thin it out just a little bit. I feel like it helps to make it glide on a bit smoother. And it's also helpful if I get any goopy wax in a spot that I want to remove. The mineral spirits can definitely take care of that. And again, you can see here just what a beautiful difference that black wax is making over the paint. Once I was finished with the black wax, I went back over my sunflowers with a little bit of Decor wax by Redesign with Prima. This color is called Eternal, and this will just kind of help add back some of the sparkle to my sunflowers that was kind of dimmed a little bit by that black wax. So I'm just using my fingertip to apply it to all of the raised surfaces on my sunflowers. Once I was finished with this, my little clock project was basically done. I forgot to hit record when I added back the numbers. That was a process in itself, you guys, but I got it done. In the end, though, I absolutely love this clock. It is so, so beautiful. I'm very proud of it. One of the best projects I've done in a while, I think, and I hope you guys like it too. Well, that is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my sunflower clock, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Before I forget, though, I just wanted to say a great big thank you to everyone who placed an order for the new Redesign with Prima release. I was very overjoyed with the response I got from that. And I also wanted to let you guys know that I will be restocking a lot of those products by tomorrow. So I just got my boxes delivered, and they should be in the system either tonight or tomorrow morning. So if you're in need of anything, check back then. Anyway, if you did enjoy today's video, please give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of my project for today. Just a quick reminder too, I do carry a full range of DIY paint and products here in my shop and also online at www www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry DIY paint and products, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint and products, as well as some Recycled Treasures decoupage papers, and of course the Redesign with Prima. So check those out there. And then let's see, for next Friday's video, I am hoping to stay working in my kitchen. I honestly might switch gears at some point and use some of the new Christmas items from Redesign with Prima, but we'll see. So I hope you guys can join me back here on Friday for that. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic week, you guys, and thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye.